All right, welcome to the extended version of a 5 good F1 seconds, where I'm going to try to convince you, the listener, to watch Formula One. And to help me do that, we are joined by Lee Stevens, who is one of the co-hosts of the very popular 3Legs4Wheels podcast. After all of his other co-hosts, Paul, Sean, and Chris, all said no, we had to settle with Lee.
That's the great thing about only having a small team is that sooner or later enough people say no that I can.
Right. You said your DMs were open. Everyone else said they were closed, so they were harder to reach. So we figured we'd just go with you. Is this the first NASCAR podcast that you've ever been on?
Yeah. I mean, I've probably said quite a lot of smack about NASCAR, so it's a strange place for me to be. But yes,
right. NASCAR fans try and send it back, so I'm trying to bridge those two worlds. It's just 4 tires on the ground, going in circles. Some take left turns, some take right turns. I think we can all get along. So you said you want to go to a NASCAR race. Is that serious, or are you just joking?
Yeah. Like whenever you see the like close-up footage of NASCARs, and the speed of them going around,
right?
It just looks like a really good day out. I'm not sure I could watch a season, but I could certainly watch an hour.
Right, especially under the influence of some beers or something in the infield. Absolutely. Going around. You want some tomatoes thrown at you? I heard. I can make that all happen. That's all possible. And you can't. And confirm to Paul that I do have 10 fingers, only 10. So
yeah, they're all thumbs.
Right. Well, I mean, it's going to be an audio production, so you could have just lied to the people, but that's fine. So I think all of our listeners have probably, if they've heard of Formula One, they think snobby, they think international, they think boring, no passing, same guy wins every week. But we know it's more than that. How can you convince these people to become Formula One fans and check it out?
I mean, I'd like to say that your description of Formula One was inaccurate then, but it's not wholly inaccurate, is it?
No.
I mean, I've been into Formula One since I was a small child.
Okay.
The first race I watched was the one where Senna died. That was the first time I watched it. I remember watching it with my dad, and to me, it's like the ultimate team sport. Because people from the outside, you look in, you think, oh, it's just the drivers. Then as soon as you realize the amount of stuff that goes into making these teams work,
right.
it's like an onion of a sport, I think. Like if you watch football or basketball or something like that, you kind of know what the rules are and you can see what people are doing. But the more you look into Formula One and then you look at what goes on, like design-wise and how the pit stops manage, it's just layer after layer of just like competition.
Right. And you can always find more stuff to find out. It never ends with just what you see on TV.
No.
Yeah, it's great. And I think a great part about following racing is you can just watch one race a weekend and you can pretty much keep up with the sport. So the barrier to entry isn't that far, where if you want to keep up with football or soccer, like you have to watch so many games to really be on top of everything. Where with NASCAR and Formula One, if you watch that one race that weekend, I mean, you kind of know what's going on.
Yeah. But isn't there a massive calendar for NASCAR? Is it like
we have 36 races.
Wow.
And it's about every weekend. So the 2020 Formula One season kind of felt like more of a NASCAR season where you guys had races every weekend, as opposed to normally we're every other week, or you take the summer break or summer holiday in August. So did you like the pacing this year versus a regular year?
I don't know. Obviously it's been an odd year this year, to say the least.
Right.
Like podcast wise, I found it, I don't want to use the word exhausting, because I think when people use the word exhausting for things like doing podcasts, it's like, come on, mate. This
is hard work. This is hard work.
Have you ever done anything difficult? But I think because it's been fairly predictable this year, it's apart from a couple of outstanding races, it's felt like a slog. I'll be happy when this race is over. We do the season review, and I can switch off from thinking about Formula One until testing starts, which is only a day this year, next year, isn't it?
Right, yeah, you just get the one day. So how do we address the no passing issue? In NASCAR, I think I heard the other day that there were more passes in one Daytona 500 race, which has the most passing in a NASCAR race, than the whole entire F1 season for lead changes. I guess, what would be your answer to that, to some snobby American?
Well, I'd argue that most of the passes that go on in, especially Indy, and even I don't know a huge amount about IndyCar, but I'd say the kind of plastic passes
Right.
Like, when you watch cycling, for instance, and bikes are constantly going back and forwards because all they are really is just jostling for position while they wait for what the last 20 laps or it is to actually race each other. Um, I don't mind the lack of overtaking in Formula One. I never have mind the lack of overtaking. I hate DRS with a passion. I absolutely hate
So,
it.
so DRS is the zones in an F1 race. There's usually about two or three of them where if a driver is 1 second behind the car in front of them, they can turn on this DRS, which lowers the back wing and gives them an extra 40 horsepower or so
Yeah,
to help pass them, to help them go right by. Right.
there's an easier way of explaining that. If you imagine Mario Kart and there's a
Right.
certain place on the circuit which has got a question mark box which always gives you a mushroom if you're behind somebody.
Right.
That's DRS.
Right. And I think last year you said you like that the cars have form and that you kind of know where each car is going to be slotted each week. And
Yeah,
that sort of predictability helps you then judge the driver against that car. Where in NASCAR, anyone can come in the top 10. 10 guys can come in the top 10, another 10 in between 10 and 20, that we don't really have that form week in and week out. So it's sometimes hard to judge the mid to back marker guys, but you can do that in Formula One for sure.
yeah. Well, I think. Did you watch MotoGP at all
No,
with
I haven't
bikes?
checked that out.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but they've done they did a lot to try and close the field up. But
Right.
what it's kind of done is made the results random. So and it there's something a bit odd where you feel, well, I don't really know if the best guy's winning here because this bike works on this circuit or this bike doesn't work on this circuit. Um, so yeah, I think it'd be nice if they were all a bit closer and a bit more evenly matched. But it's like any sport, isn't it? You're going to get whoever spends the most money is going to end up at the top.
Right. It's the
Uh,
same way in NASCAR. Yep. The top
yeah,
spenders get the top results, but
yeah, and those like people will say like things like so it's just the car that helps people win, but realistically, it's the best drivers that find themselves in the best cars.
right. And they find themselves the best sponsorship that can then
Yeah.
support them being in the best cars. Yeah. It's all fundamental and it makes sense. So
Hmm.
NASCAR is a very complicated playoff championship, how they award their champion, where we do 27 weeks of races and then they cut it off and only certain guys advance to the playoffs. Then they do 3 races, eliminate more guys. It's very confusing. Where Formula One has a very straightforward, whoever has the most points at the end of the season wins the championship. But with Formula One, you can end up where Hamilton wins the season 3 races before it's over. Do you
Yeah.
still like that championship format, or would you rather something crazy like NASCAR, like how we
I
do
didn't
it?
know. I didn't know that's how
You
NASCAR
didn't
did it.
know?
So
Yeah.
is that I take it that it's like a knockout sort of
Right. So they
season
try
then.
in 2016. They wanted to value wins more. So if you get a win in those first 26 races, you automatically qualify for the playoffs. So
Hmm.
it tries to make people go for the win more than just racing for points or race for fifth or something.
It would suck so you mean when you go into a season of NASCAR,
Yep.
there's nothing guaranteeing you that your favorite driver will be there at the end.
No. And then this year, the guy who won 9 races, had the most points, he got knocked out in one of the playoffs and came in fifth for the season. So it'd be like Hamilton this past race got COVID, couldn't
Yeah,
race. He wouldn't be in the championship race. He'd just be out. So the
that's
entire
weird.
season wouldn't matter. So,
That's weird. Like that's the I a friend of mine is a big fan of cricket, and
mhm.
I'm always confused by how he can enjoy cricket because it's a game that can go on for 5 days and still end in a draw.
Right.
So that's weird. I didn't know that. I prefer Formula One as it is, where it's like essentially your champion is awarded on merit.
And then you'll get your seasons where it comes down to the end and it's awesome, but
Yeah,
it's not artificial. Like it's not
no,
like this year where we're going to keep Hamilton and Bottas and Verstappen close, and then the final race will all come down to it. It is what it is.
yeah. No wonder so many wrestlers sponsored NASCARs in the '90s.
Who?
No wonder there was so many like wrestler things involved with
Oh
NASCAR in
yeah,
the
they
'90s.
keep trying to keep trying to flip the format to make it more exciting, but uh, we'll see. So there's no American drivers currently in Formula One. We only have
No.
one team with Haas, and they're terrible. So who would you
Hmm.
suggest Americans start paying attention to and start following?
Um,
Your guy
I
George
mean,
Russell.
George Russell. I think George Russell's special. I think he is going to turn out to be a once in a generation talent.
Definitely.
Um, I think for people that want to get into Formula One that are the younger as well. I mean, Lando Norris is so funny on social media. I think
Right.
he's a great gateway just as a character to get in.
I wonder how many people follow him and don't even watch the race on Sunday. I
I
bet
bet
there's a lot of people.
I bet there is people that think of him as a video game streamer and
Right, as
don't realize he's
a
a
Twitch
racing
guy.
driver.
Yep,
Yeah,
definitely. So okay, so we'll keep an eye on George Russell. Keep an eye on Lando Norris. We got Sainz moving to Ferrari. So you hate Ferrari, right? Can we break down the
yeah.
Ferrari hate for everyone and where we should stand on that?
But I don't like Ferrari because I think they've had years of rules being bent and manipulated for them. I wasn't a big Schumacher fan, so that didn't help Ferrari's case in my case. Um, and it's like the engine thing. Your listeners that might not know, it's basically being confirmed now that for at least the last 2 years, Ferrari were cheating and using. I think it was they were. I can't. Craig Scarborough on our podcast explained this the other day what they were doing, and I still don't know what it was.
What's something with like the gas intake or
Yeah, it seems that when they were off throttle, it was doing something to trick to trick the fuel flow sensor into not registering it pumping fuel in or something like that. But they were essentially burning an illegal amount of fuel in their engine,
right?
which gave them a massive advantage.
Right. So for our
So
listeners, last year, Mercedes was dominating in the beginning of the year. And then somehow out of nowhere, Ferrari just found all this power and all
yeah,
the Ferrari teams started moving towards the front. And then this year, they've gone backwards all the way to where they were last year, or even worse, really.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's just that constant like bending of the rules that little bit too much I don't like.
So what do you think about Mercedes? Do you wish they kind of came back to the field? We're going to have the budget caps next year. Do you think that's going to help with parity, or do you still want to see the form and see Mercedes at the top, Red Bull at the top?
I don't think next year won't matter because
Same car.
same cars.
Yeah.
You might see a little bit of a mix up because like teams like McLaren have already subscribed to the budget cap. So they're used to working within this budget cap already.
Right.
So maybe they'll have a slight advantage of being used to working like this. Um, I think I don't think Mercedes is going to stay in Formula One for the long haul. I think they're probably going to be bought out before 2022. I wouldn't mind betting that car will be renamed in 22.
That's a
Like
good tidbit there.
Enos Grand Prix. I think Enos will buy them out.
Okay. And then we got a new team next year, or a rebranding in Aston Martin. Vettel's coming over, Stroll staying on. So that could be a new team for people to check out if they're new to Formula One, new team, kind of new colors, at least green.
My tip is whenever there's a big rule change, and there's a big rule change in 2022, it's never the top teams that benefit from it. It's always like a Red Bull or a Ferrari or not Mercedes because they haven't really had the opportunity to stumble yet. But when there's big rule changes, your top teams never stay there. I would keep an eye on Aston Martin and what Renault, which will become Alpine next year, as like top teams.
That'd be good to see a couple midfield teams move up, and then maybe Vettel gets a swan song, perhaps maybe a win.
I'll be interested to see what happens with Vettel. I mean, at the minute, I'm a fan of Vettel's. I think he's a good driver. I think I said on the last 3Legs4Wheels podcast, I think it's a case of Formula One's got away from him, so it just doesn't really suit the way he drives. And if it was to come back to him, great. But at the moment, you've got to think that Aston Martin took like a multi-million-dollar gamble.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they could have put a pay driver in that car to at least get him through 2022, but they're serious about trying to compete. So that's good to see.
Oh yeah, it's great. It'll be nice, even just as a brand. It will be nice to have Aston Martin on the grid.
Right. The Red Bull connection really never took off, right? You'd say. No, I mean, they're on the back wing. They're on the presented by. I mean, they're a big title sponsor, but it doesn't feel like an Aston Martin team.
No, it's just a sponsor. I mean, when you think at one point that you had an Aston Martin sponsor on the side of a Red Bull, and then the engine was branded like a Tag Heuer engine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Tag Heuer make watches,
right.
So that always seemed like a strange like engine rebrand for me. That
Right. Well, I mean, watches, engines, they can do it all. So NASCAR is pretty popular here regionally. It's mostly like a South sport. I'm here in the Mid-Atlantic, Washington, D.C. area, where
Mhm.
probably no one's heard of NASCAR, no one's heard of Formula One. But so where does it kind of land where you are? Are
It's really
mostly
weird
okay.
because you feel like you're the only. I was going to say you feel like you're on an island, but I literally do live on an island.
Right.
But yeah, like Formula One fans just seem to be spread out in the UK because it's mostly football. Like everybody loves football
Right.
in England, or soccer, and I hate soccer. I
Okay.
always have done.
Well, our NASCAR fans, we can come to an agreement on that. We can find some mutual ground on the hatred for soccer. So we got something there.
So like everybody wants to talk about football, but
Right.
I just want to talk to people about Formula One. So like genuinely in my local pub, the only people that are interested in Formula One is me and my dad. That's
Well,
it.
as long as
Um,
there's some other person, I guess that's
yeah,
all right. So where does Formula One stand against like tennis or golf or any of the other kind of single sports? I
I
know it's
think
not
it's
a team sport, but
I
those
think it's
things.
quiet. It's done. It's worse now in the UK because it's behind a paywall, and
Oh, it is.
yeah,
Okay.
Sky is ridiculously expensive. Sky Television.
Wow.
I think for my television package to watch Formula One, it probably works out about 100 and say $120 a month,
Wow. Just
just
to watch the
just
races?
just to pay for the television, like the Sky Television. So yeah, it's a bit expensive. I'm addicted to it, so I pay through the nose for my addiction.
So how do they think they're going to grow the sport? I mean, I guess maybe they think they're going to they're already at maximum capacity and like they
Mm,
can't grow it at all, but
I think it was a backdoor deal Eddie Jordan, not Eddie Jordan, Eddie Bernie Eccleston did on the way out of Formula One. He signed this massive, big, multi-million-dollar deal with Sky in
right.
Europe, and then he was gone. And the Formula One has hemorrhaged viewers in Europe because of the TV deal.
Right. I mean, so in the United States, it used to be on NBC, and they had their own feed and they had their own announcers here in America do it off the television. But in 2017 or 2018, they switched to ESPN, where we get your Sky
Yeah,
coverage. I won't tell you it's completely for free here, included in our cable package, but it's been so much better going from the NBC. They were just talking about what they saw on the TV. They didn't have the
yeah.
Sky access, but so I think that's really helped here.
The Sky coverage is good. I like the Sky coverage. I just think for growing the sport, having it behind a paywall when it's kind of a niche sport anyway,
You need to get as many
it just
eyeballs
doesn't
on it
make
as you can.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all.
All right. So, kind of coming to the end here. Do we have any final pitches to our listeners to turn into Formula One in March when we head to Australia? Fingers crossed.
It's you have the fastest cars in the world around circuits. Maybe not in a straight line, but around a circuit, you won't find anything quicker than that. You have the best drivers in the world as well. We see. Um, I mean, just how did you guys take Fernando Alonso going into Indy?
I'm not really a big Indy fan, but I remember people were pretty excited for him. And the one race he did qualify for and ran in, and then I think his engine went down halfway through.
Yeah, yeah,
He got a pretty big cheer. So I think people like seeing other guys take a chance on it. But the even NASCAR and IndyCar is still kind of like NASCAR Formula One, where there's not a lot of mixing
right.
there.
Okay.
So I don't think NASCAR fans would care, but the IndyCar fans definitely seem to appreciate it of
Yeah,
him coming over.
but that's I think Alonso being able to do that and to not, I wouldn't say walk into Indy, but essentially to come in and be, when he qualified, to be one of the top guys as well.
Yeah, it
It-
definitely shows their pace that
yeah,
they have in
yeah.
Formula One.
And
Definitely.
it's there's just so much about it, and there's so much sort of glamour around it as well. I quite like, it's. I've often said this, that I don't think there's a more connected sport in the world. It's
Hmm.
when you've got people like Lawrence Stroll that owns what's the clothing company he owns? God, Tommy Hilfiger.
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
it's when you've got like these billionaires getting involved in the sport and buying teams and stuff like that. It's in some ways, it's a bit of a shame because it shows how much of an elitist sport it is. But
Right.
it definitely adds. It definitely adds to the show in the end, I think.
Yeah. So if we could tell one people to check out one race from the 2020 season, which one do you think they should check out? Imola with Gasly winning. That was a pretty good race.
Yeah, Imola with Gasly winning. I think the last race, if people understood that George Russell had come from like the worst team on the grid to
I
have
think that
one
would take
go.
another step, I think, to explain
Yeah,
how
yeah,
just like crazy that was. But
yeah. If I was going to recommend anybody watch any race, I'd recommend they watch Canada from 2011.
yeah, that I went back and watched that one on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All right, so I think we're wrapping up here. Where can our listeners find you if they happen to turn on Formula One and they need a little bit more coverage?
You can find me talking about Formula One on 3Legs4Wheels, 3Legs4Wheels podcast. And you can also just hear me talk about other stuff at Must See Audio podcast.
Must See Audio podcast. All right, Lee, thanks for joining us. I hope we can do this again before the 2021 season.
I
Maybe
do.
we can do some previews. So hope you had a good time.
Cheers, man. Thank you.